It's another edition of Baseball and Beyond, and today a World Series MVP, one of my all-time favorite players and favorite people. David Eckstein, welcome back to St. Louis.
Thank you, Brad. I really appreciate that.
How excited are you to be on the podcast?
I am thrilled. This is probably one of my lifetime achievement awards to be on your podcast.
Yes, well, it's a new age, but it's always good seeing you back. You're here for Christian Day, which this has been taped, so that was back in August. But just tell us a little bit about what brought you back for Christian Day.
Yes, they reached out to me and asked if I could speak and just basically talk a little bit about my faith and my career and how they both like to coincided. So it's something that, in the past I've been very private about, but it's one of those things like just talking with my family and my mom, my wife, they think that, this might be a good time to start, actually going out there and speaking on it a little bit more.
And the term scrappy is always brought up with you, and I always wondered, I wonder if he gets sick of that. Do you get sick of that term, or is that you are literally ultimate scrappy MVP Hall of Fame guy?
Thank you. I actually embody that term because if anybody sees me, I'm not the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the best out there, but when I hear the word scrappy, it meant that I gave you everything I had every single day in trying to help the club win. So I actually love that term.
A walk-on. That is something that we can't believe anytime we read about it. But tell us a little bit back then, what it was like to have to convince people that you can play this game.
It was, coming out of high school, I thought that I would have a baseball scholarship offer, but I knew I needed to go to Division I. And when no one came knocking, it was one of those things that put a plan in place, and it was like my entire family had gone to University of Florida, so it was time for me to follow in their footsteps and try to find a way to get on that team. And it was one of those things that I felt like I had to prove myself. So if I went to a lesser school, that people would always question, oh, the talent wasn't as good. So it was one of those things that I, very fortunate. Some breaks fell my way that put me in the position to be in front of the coaches to see what I could do, and I was able to make the club.
At the early age, obviously, you're not as tall, you're not as big, so is this something that you used every day as a motivating thing, and it works, right?
It definitely does. I knew I was never going to be that guy that shows up and, just raw talent alone, like impress people. I knew it was something that I had to, very specifically, learn the game at a higher level than anybody else, because the one thing that I could do and that anybody can do that plays, they can actually be in the right spot at the right time on every single play, and when they're hitting, they can actually do the right thing and put themselves in the best position to help the club win. And that's where I really took a love to, like how to learn the game so that I put myself in a position to be successful and in the right spot. And so that's something, at a young age. My Little League coach did not allow us to bring our bat to practice. We had to only worry about playing defense and being in the right spot at the right time.
Well, they could use some defense on the Cardinals. This year it's not the same, but don't want to pass over the Angels stuff, but I think a lot of people will be listening from St. Louis. You get here in 2005, and you're put right in the middle of a great team. And talk about what it meant that, they had just lost Edgar Renteria, and they come to you and they say, we want you to be the guy. That's big shoes to fill, but you'd had a pretty good career going out there in L.A. already.
Yeah, I was so ecstatic, especially since the way I got over here. The Angels did not tender me a contract, so I became a free agent. And within days, the Cardinals reached out. And the key to what they did was they wanted me just to be me. They had enough players. They had the superstars. They had the Rollins, the Pujols, the Edmonds, the Reggie Sanders, and Larry Walkers. They didn't need me to be any more than just myself. And coming into this club, and I've said this many times, that was probably the most talented club I've ever played on. And I was able to go out there and just be myself and not try to do anything that I wasn't able to do. And then, as soon as I stepped out on that stage in the winter warm-up, getting the standing ovation from the crowd, the love and the support from the fans were there immediately, so I knew I'd made the right choice.
Well, and this town obviously embraces that. But 05, it's just 04 also. You weren't here for that, but 05. Just tell me a little bit about what it was like at the end of October when you guys leave Old Bush and they're tearing it down 5 days later, and you guys know that. How did these two teams not win? These are the two best teams, including maybe, and then you put the 80s teams in there that just didn't win, but I think people love those teams. We'll talk about 06 in a second, but just those two were just so good.
Yeah, that club in 05, it was one of those things that just shows you why you have to play the game. because it was the best team I've ever played on. And especially after Albert hitting that home run in Game 5, I thought we were definitely a team of destiny, that we were going to come back home, win the next two, and head our ways to the World Series. And then when Roy Oswalt came out and pitched the game he pitched, and, you know, all of a sudden the final out was made and your season's over. It's one of those things that even my wife would tell you. You know, I mean, it's about a month worth of depression afterwards, because I promise you, you put so much into it, you fully believe you're going to win, even up to that final out. And when it didn't happen, it's like, oh my gosh. And then, like you said, you know, they're tearing down Busch Stadium. They're gonna rebuild. They're gonna build a brand new stadium for us. And so it was like, you know, we're ending history today, and then following year starting up a new one.
'06, the team has been back together. That was so neat to see you guys all together. And when you looked at the group that was here, that was a mishmash. I mean, '05 was a team, '04 was a team, but you had new guys in Spezio, Miles. I mean, that was a mishmash. You had the bullpen of Josh Kinney and Chris Duncan. I mean, that was that was my first year that I got to travel with the team, so I saw some fun stuff as well. But tell me a little bit about the reunion and just thinking back 10 years ago about that team.
You mean going back to that '05 club? That's why you play the games. You know what I mean? We show up, and it's definitely, you know, a little bit different group. You know, guys that many people might not have known as well compared to the guys we had before. But it was one of those teams that came together. You know, we made some great, you know, pickups throughout the season as well. You know, picking up a Jeff Weaver, picking up a Ronnie Belliard, and guys like that, and then a Preston Wilson. You know, guys that really added energy to our club. And then, like you said, you know, being back here a couple weeks ago and seeing everybody and seeing what we were able to accomplish, and then seeing the fans' response, you know, still 10 years later, just shows you what a special time that was and what a special moment it was, especially within the Cardinal history.
I think reunions have to be the most fun because you guys just kind of you don't really get to talk to these guys, and to see them back and do the things that you did, and basically like it's '06 again. What was it? Just tell me the feeling that you know that group, those 25 guys, 30 guys, you look at each other and you all had that huge part on that team.
Yeah, that's one thing, you know, I'm not sure if the fans really realize, like once the year in and everyone over time goes their separate way, the contact is actually less and less. So a lot of those guys, you mean legitimately, I've seen for the first time since actually playing the game, because you really, you know what I mean, just life gets busy. And so coming back together and then just reliving, you know, some of the great stories that we had throughout the year, that, you know, you can't really talk about on tape or anything like that, and just seeing the guys, seeing the guys smile. I know I probably smiled as much as I have all year, because it brings back such great memories. And golly, it's one of those things that was funny, especially with the wives that were here. They were hoping, like, can we do this every 5 years? Because it's just something that doesn't happen. And you know, we were able to produce something special, and then coming back together as one to relive it. Yeah, we felt like it was back in '06.
Yeah, and there was so much talent, obviously, but the chemistry, like I said, the mishmash, when you have characters, like I said, a Spezio, a Mile, there was characters. And tell me, I know a lot of people talk about chemistry. That's a big deal, right?
I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, what team chemistry is that basically everyone coming into the clubhouse with one mission, and that's winning. And who knows what that might bring. It might be like you were talking about a Scott Spezio. Scott had the uncanny ability to keep everybody loose, no matter what the situation was, because
he was nuts.
He was downright crazy, and we loved him, you know. And I think, you mean, another one, you know, Chris Duncan. He was young in his career, and that naiveness, you know, just sitting there, what? Who cares? You know, I'm going to hit. Here, give me the bat. Let me swing. You know, stuff like that. It really loosens up a veteran club. But then within the veterans, who are, you know, who have been through this and understand that, hey, we really need to go out there and stay focused. It was a great mix. And then, I mean, like you said, adding a Preston Wilson, especially at that time when we were just struggling, that extra boost of energy. I don't know if you saw him play, but it was one of those things that when he stepped on the field, it was almost kind of electric. And bringing that late in the season just helped us find a way to get into the playoffs. And then Jeff Weaver, you know, what do you want to say? But then you had the consistency, you know, of an Albert Pujols, a Yadier Molina, guys like that really, you know, anchored the club as well. So it was a lot of fun.
It's been about 110, 115 World Series, maybe 100 MVPs. You're one of them. I mean, that to me shows the talent of the team. We talked about Molina, he had a great series. Roland, Edmonds, Juan Encarnacion had. But to me, that embodies everything about that team, that you win the MVP. Just how excited was that? How often do you think about that? That you were the guy that they gave that trophy to?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, and I've said this many times. What Yadier did that entire playoffs, including what he did in the World Series, getting that pitching staff that by that point, no one really knew in that bullpen, to get them to throw the pitches the way they threw them to put us in a position to win. I would have been like, there's a good chance he was probably the MVP. And so, but then when they called my name, I promise you, it was something that I was basically stunned. It was something I've never dreamed about before, and probably did not realize it until I actually stopped playing, because I would never let myself go back in that moment. But ever since I've been done playing, it does come up all the time. Whenever I get introduced, that's what I get introduced as, and it does bring back a lot of fond memories. And I'm still a little bit stunned that I was actually picked for that.
And the car, everyone I told that I was interviewing you said, well, what do you do with the car? So did you never drove it, right? I don't believe, right?
Yeah, I've never driven the car. It's in my garage right now. I gave it to my brother Rick. My brother moved out of Florida, but he left it there in my garage. And so, but basically, they actually gave me the manual, a booklet, and let me pick out cars. So the car is black on black with. And then they gave me $5,000 to engrave it as my own. And so basically, we took out the seats, and we were able to embroider, my name with the World Series MVP and the MLB logo. So in both heads of both seats, that's what's in it. So that's what the car is doing right now. My brother just got a new job, so he's going to be returning back to Florida, and I'm hoping he takes the car out of my garage so that the car actually gets driven.
There you go. I also think it was crazy that we had another World Series 5 years later, and David Freese does his thing, and you're in the ballpark. And I talked to you earlier this year about it, and you said it was like watching an out-of-body experience, because it was like I got to see what it looked like. What was that like for you to be in the stands as a Cardinal fan at that point?
I was one of the biggest fans of baseball growing up. And you hate to say it, when you start playing the game, you kind of lose a little bit of that fanness that you've embodied prior to coming in. And so it was my first, basically, actually my second game back to watch a game after I was done playing. And I came in, and I'm sitting up there. And I tell you, I felt like a little kid again, watching David do what he did, especially in the ninth inning, to come back and then hit the walk-off. I was sitting there screaming and cheering. I was getting chills just watching the Cardinals fans, because as a player, you never really see it from that side of things. And I'm telling you right now, like that night really brought back the love of the game for me once again, and seeing what Cardinal Nation was able to do. It was, to this day, probably one of the best games I've ever been at.
So what are you doing now? I know Ashley's got something huge going on that's going to make you millions of dollars. You'll never have to work ever again. So what are you up to? And then tell us what Ashley's up to, because I think I've heard this. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. So basically, when I'm back in Florida, I volunteer at the local high school that I played at, and so I go and help that baseball team out. And then during the summer times, I help out with the 18U USA Club to help select the club. Last year I helped coach. This year I'll just help pick the team. And so being around that type of a talent, the next upcoming MLB draft picks, it's been a lot of fun. But Ash started her company called Her Universe. We do female sci-fi apparel. And so we're all around. We're all around. It's been going really good. It was a niche that no one was filling for this woman. And so she came up with the idea. We go to cons now. We're all in the sci-fi world. So it's been a lot of fun for the both of us.
You guys are so much fun. Do these kids know who you are? Do you have to pull out a tape? I mean, do they know who David Eckstein is?
Some do. You might have to say, hey, and they'll go look on YouTube or something like that. But it's kind of funny to see the reaction. I was helping out with a summer league team this past summer, and so I was introduced, talked a little bit, and then the dad grabs me about a week later, And he said his son came home and said my name. He had no clue who I was. And then he about freaked out once he looked me up. So it was one of those things, it has been 6 years since I've stopped playing. So yeah, you kind of fall out of the memory of these young kids and stuff like that. But the one thing, if you ever get on the field with me, I try to be just as young as them, because they definitely want to see what you can actually do. They don't like to be just told. They want to see it by you. And so that's what I try to do.
And lastly, if they go to YouTube, they can see that you were an actor in She Spies. You did some wrestling work also. Did any of that kind of coming back into your what you're doing in your arsenal these days?
I think acting is probably the furthest thing from my next career. When you have a wife as an actress, you get very overly critiqued, and makes me know that I will never be an actor. So, but no, I don't really see any of that. I just see myself behind watching Ash do her stuff.
It's great seeing you all the time. I thank Joe Pfeiffer back here who's giving us the rap cue. You're going to sign some stuff, but it's always a pleasure, and thanks for coming. And you have family in town, so you're here more than we knew, right?
Yeah, definitely. My wife's family lives here in Chesterfield, and so yeah, we're back and forth more often than people think.
That's awesome. Well, it's great seeing you. Always a pleasure. It's the MVP of the 2006 World Series, David Eckstein. We thank him for joining us on Baseball and Beyond. Subscribe on iTunes and follow me on Twitter at Brad Straubinger. Thanks for listening.